Hello, hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here on the Modern Moms Roadmap to Balance podcast with our special series of Love After Kids. Joining me today is Dr. Tavari Brown, who is an Atlanta based therapist, coach, public health facilitator, and corporate speaker. She has nearly 30 years of experience helping high achieving women break free from people pleasing, set boundaries with confidence, and take charge of their lives without the guilt. And today, we're bringing that expertise into the world of dating and relationships post kids. We'll be talking about the challenges and misconceptions of dating as a parent, what it looks like to introduce a new partner into your child's world, and how to navigate the emotional ups and downs of this process. Plus, we'll explore the expectations we place on ourselves, the pressure society puts on single parents when it comes to love, and how to approach this journey in a way that honors both your needs and your family's well being. If you've ever wondered when the right time is to start dating, how to talk to your kids about a new relationship, or what to do when your child isn't on board with a new partner, this episode is for you. So let's get into it.
Hey, Tavari.
Hey,
Thank you so much for joining us on the show
it's my
today.
pleasure. I love the audience. I love talking about parenting issues and relationships. So we're just in my sweet spot.
Yeah, and I'm really excited about this episode that we're going to kind of get into today. I know before when we met previously to booking this date, you had talked about doing a show that was talking about finding love after kids, like people who are single and trying to find partnership and they have kids.
Yeah, absolutely. So I
So,
think even as it relates to parenting and relationships, I think there are a few nuances.
mhm,
So particularly, maintaining a good marriage while you're parenting. If your marriage is dissolving, how are we coming to an understanding and establishing your partner aren't together? If you are dating and you have children, like what does it look like to blend family? So if you have children and your new partner has
mhm,
children, what does that look like? What does it look like to introduce them to your family, your family of origin, or for you and your children to meet that person's family of origin? I think that's a particular nuance. And then I think third
mhm.
is that this is just new territory for everyone, right? So if you're no
Absolutely.
longer with your partner and trying to co-parent at a distance, what does that feel like? And what are the rules and boundaries there?
Mhm.
But then what does that look like for your kids as they're adjusting to maybe a new life and new situations and new people and expectations? And perhaps you're having big feelings, your former partner is having big feelings, your new partner might have big feelings,
Yeah.
and then to deal with children who have big feelings, who are still trying to figure out what to
Mhm.
do with those big feelings. And most of us try to navigate that space and we're not experts. So I think when I saw what the topic area was and kind of introduced the notion of, well, what does that look like when marriages end? You seemed really interested in saying, you know what,
Mhm.
I think this is a good time to talk about this. We're now
Oh,
recording it at the end of
yeah.
February.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't think it's talked about enough, and I think people in this situation feel a lot of shame around not only their marriage ending, but in thinking like, well, am I not thinking about my kids if I'm trying to enter into another relationship? Should I not do that until the kids are out of the house? And I feel like there's no right decision. It's the decision that is the best for you and your family. But I feel like sometimes there's this pressure like, oh, well, you shouldn't even be thinking about yourself until the kids are out of the house and then you can take the time to find love.
Yeah, I mean, I would even rewind in terms of like if you're in an unhappy marriage, a generation ago, people talked about staying in the marriage for the kids, but what are we modeling for children if both people are miserable in the marriage? Kids can see that you're not happy, but
Mhm.
and so what are we modeling that? Are we teaching children that marriage is about sticking through when people aren't happy or aren't satisfied? I think that's the first step is if a marriage is
Mhm.
ending, which is never a happy thing, even when a bad marriage ends, there's this feeling of
Oh,
failure.
yeah.
Like there's this dissolution, there's this disappointment. Very few people go into their
Mhm.
marriages saying, oh, but when this ends and the kids are in kindergarten and middle school, what does this look like? So I think,
Yeah.
when people are having to first wrestle with that, the notion of what does this look like? What does this mean for the kids even, let alone for me as an individual? So I think that's the first step, is really just kind of acknowledging like that's already a big decision before we even go into the foray of what does it look like to date. But let me say that I think particularly as
Mhm.
women, as human beings, like we're people and we have needs, we have emotional, spiritual, financial needs. And it may not always be
Yeah.
possible to put your needs on the back burner until your kids hit whatever situation. And it doesn't mean that it's necessarily easier to do it when the kids are older. I have a friend who is
Mhm.
she's dissolving her relationship, and her 9-year-old said, "Why didn't you do this sooner? Why did you
Oh
wait
my
so long?
gosh.
Why did you wait so long? Why did you wait till I was so big
Yeah.
to make this decision? Now I have to adjust. I
Mm.
would have adjusted to it better had you done it 5 years ago. At 4,
Oh,
I would have been better equipped to deal with this than at 9."
yeah, yeah. And I mean, we don't know that, right?
But
But
that's the
I
catch,
think
is that there's
it
no good time for it. There's no good time for
yeah, there's
change.
no good
Yeah.
time. But if anything, that really highlights like your kids know
Mhm.
when a situation is bad. There's no hiding stuff from them. Like they know, they feel it, and you staying in a bad situation isn't helpful for them because they sense everything. Kids are so intuitive, and they could, like, us as people could be like very intuitive people, except it's kind of forced out of us. We're kind of taught to, well, don't pay attention to that, just push through, just don't think about it right now, or it's not for you to worry about, but they're worrying about it.
Yeah, and I think when children express their concerns and they see that something's awry, I think it's an insult to their intelligence when we act like everything is fine.
Mm.
There was a saying, man, I have to figure out remember what it was, but it was like this like dishonest conversation. It started with dishonest, but basically it's like asking people
Mm.
to stay in a delusion, like dishonest pleasure or something. Like
Oh.
it's so, and sometimes families, like families of origin, we do that. We tiptoe around
Mm.
things and everybody pretends it's not an issue because we're happy and at peace. And I think, in family systems, they talk about that kind of homeostasis. Like we manage to stay in
Mhm.
balance in a place when we're sweeping things under the rug. But, I think it insults
Yeah.
children's first instinct is to say, hey, that seems to be strange, or that feels funny, or that feels weird. And it's dishonest for us to
Mhm.
not acknowledge when there is something going on, even if we feel like it's too big for them to reconcile with. Sometimes we're protecting our own
Yeah.
feelings. Sometimes we're trying to ignore it and we don't have the words for it. And then we have, these other people looking at us and saying, hey, what is that? There's an elephant in the room. We're gaslighting them by
Yeah.
saying there isn't. So even coming up with
Mhm.
our language for,
Absolutely.
yes, there's something here, but I don't have the words for it right now. And that's very honest. That's modeling honest
Yeah.
behavior on our children's behalf too, because we want the same thing from them.
Mhm.
When we're like, hey, what is that in your room? And they're like, oh, that's nothing. Oh, it's something. But even for them to be able to say, mommy, I'm
Yeah.
working on something, or mommy, I don't want to talk about it right now. That's
Yes.
more honest than saying, no, there's nothing there.
Yes, and I think even so, like, I don't have a teenager, my oldest is 9, but even when you are working, like, dealing with teenagers, if you're a parent and you have a teenager that's just like, "I don't know. Well, I don't know." That they learn that.
Yeah.
They learn to say, "I don't know," because any other time that they maybe brought something up, it was just maybe swept under the rug or pushed aside.
hmm And I have a 10-year-old, newly minted 10-year-old, and it's interesting being a therapist and parenting children, right? So my kid
Mhm.
just this morning was really quiet in the car, and I was in my own feelings. I thought that she was upset with me. We had to rush out the door, and I'm kind of fussing at her
Oh,
about how her lunch was. So she's really quiet, but she's an I don't know kind of kid. So rather than let her sit with the I don't know, sometimes I give the multiple choice answer. I'm like, is it this? Is it that? Are you thinking about this thing? Or sometimes my kid isn't thinking about really anything. She really is just observing her surroundings. And that's a nice thing. But when I
mhm.
say to her, hey, what are you thinking about? And she says, I don't know. Then I start giving them multiple choice. Are you thinking about it's Friday? Are you thinking about what your day is looking like? Are you thinking about what you want to do over the weekend? Are you just observing,
Mhm.
the things outside? And when we give them the multiple choice, and sometimes they come back with, no, I was just thinking that my tennis shoes are a little bit too tight. Or no, I was just thinking that I don't want to have
Yeah.
pizza for lunch. But sometimes with children, we have to give them the prompt. So there's the open-ended question, what are you thinking about? And it's the more closed-ended question, are you happy? And they're like, no. And you're like, well, now I want more information. Then as opposed to the open-ended question of saying, hey, are you worried about this thing? Are you concerned about this thing? Do you feel some kind of way about this? Is the performance coming up, is that giving you butterflies, or do you feel prepared about the day? For them to come back and
Hmm.
say, no, you're totally off
Yeah.
base. Like it's, that I thought my shirt
Yeah.
was blue and it's actually black.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think there's a connection here too, even in our romantic relationships, is sometimes we think that it's something totally off. Like we think like they're mad at us and they're thinking like, no, I'm just had a really stressful day at work and my boss just reamed me on my way out, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've even had that personal situation recently where I was trying to solve for something for my partner and I. And then I
Mm.
realized that I was doing all this work to make something better for us, and I had
Ah.
solved for the wrong problem. I was solving for time,
Mm.
and it wasn't time that was in question. There was another element that was in question, but because I had assumed that it was time, I started fixing for time. I got a babysitter and I made sure that we
Okay.
had date night, and that wasn't the challenge. The challenge was something else. So when we are actually
Mm.
asking the question and saying, even in a solution oriented way, like, hey, I'm feeling like we haven't had enough time together, so I'm going to schedule a date night. Is that what you're looking forward to our partner, or is that what you feel like we need? It opens it up for them to say, no, what I think we need
Mm.
is to have sex more frequently. It's like, oh, okay, well, I could have saved
Yeah.
$200.
That's right. Yeah, no, that's so good.
Mhm.
And before I ask this question, we need to take a little step back because I didn't ask our question of the day.
Absolutely.
So I ask a question to all my guests at the beginning. And so with this new series, Love After Kids, the question that I have for you is what's one thing you've learned about maintaining balance in love or marriage, especially after kids?
I think the biggest thing is just the importance of continually pouring into your relationship, into your marriage, into your
Mm.
partnership, into your primary relationship. I think oftentimes the relationships, especially when we have babies, like babies, infants, I feel like from like
Oh,
0 to
yeah.
age 4, the kids take up all the space,
Yes.
all of the energy, all of our extra time, all of our creativity and emotional bandwidth. And I
Hmm.
think sometimes we look at our partners and think, well, they're an adult. They can figure it out. They're big, right? They know how to problem solve. But these little people, the little person really needs me. Like the little person will die without me. But the big person,
Hmm.
they can swim. They can figure it out. They can solution. They can run just like I can. And sometimes parenting can suffocate primary relationships. And that doesn't mean that,
Mm,
parenting
totally.
a
Yeah.
child isn't important or parenting your children isn't important, but so is pouring into your primary relationship. So I would say having those conversations. And with some of my clients, we call it staff meeting, we call it have a powwow, but you're carving out
Yeah.
time for your relationship, even if and it's a meeting, right? Even if it's just 15 minutes once a
Hmm.
week or 15 minutes a night, but we're turning off devices. We don't have our cell phones out. There's not screens, the TV's not on, that we are sitting across from each other, looking at each other and having a conversation. I
Yes.
also warn people to not just make it about negative stuff. Well, you didn't do this or you didn't do that.
Oh,
Like the
absolutely.
15 minutes is for us to also talk about our relationship, what's working for us, what do we want to do
Hmm.
we want to take a trip, what are we looking forward to this week, or I have a couple clients that do it on Sunday night,
Yeah.
so it's what are we looking forward to, but what are we going to do together that's going to be fun, what do you need from me in order to help make your week go a little bit more smoothly. It's supporting each other and
Yeah.
having conversations about that support, but it's also carving out time together, that physical time to pour into each other's love languages, whether it's acts of service or quality time
Mm.
or affection or words of affirmation. It's checking in and making sure that our partners are getting the thing that fuels them, and having the conversations about what it is that I need more of from you. What is it that you need more of from me? So that sometimes
Yeah.
that needs to happen when children are asleep. Sometimes we need to throw some money at the solution and, get a babysitter. Sometimes it means getting the
Yeah.
rest of our communities to lean in. And on every other Friday night, it's a given that the kids go to my sister's house or your parents' house or a
Mm,
godparent's house
yeah.
or a friend's house so that we
Hmm.
have time together. And that may or may not mean that we're going on a date together. Maybe it's just time to sit on the couch and look at each other. Or maybe it is, scheduled time to share a show together or read something together. But it's carving out
Oh,
intentional
yeah.
time for that relationship. And I'll just say one last thing, the way I say it to
Hmm.
my clients, it's like cultivating a garden. And sometimes kids become
Oh,
the
absolutely.
tomatoes. Like you have these award-winning tomatoes, right? The kids are excellent, but the rabbits and the deer are eating the rest of the garden. We need to protect the lettuce. We
Yes.
need to protect the cucumbers. We need to protect the entire
Yeah.
garden and invest in the entire garden. And there are seasons in which the cucumbers need more attention than the cabbage, and that the lettuce needs a little bit more watering than the tomatoes. So it's even checking in with where do we need to put our energy as a unit, as a collective, so that we can be successful. But
Mm,
it becomes a we, that we're having conversations with our partners that are we, and it's not you versus me.
absolutely. Yeah. And I would even say, kind of going back to the things that put in place, I would even say sometimes maybe you have to give your kids a little bit of more screen time so that you and your partner can have that alone time to focus on each other. Because I know sometimes people aren't in an area where they have that extended village or they have family or friends that they really trust at that time
Mm-hmm.
to do that. And there is still ways to carve out that time, even if maybe after the kids are asleep is impossible or early mornings is impossible. Like they can have a little bit more screen time,
Yeah.
or they can go run around outside while y'all do this, or they can run around in the house while y'all go outside. It's about getting creative and making that a priority.
Absolutely. And you're coming up with a lot of creative solutions. I think the other thing is, particularly as children start to get a little bit older, is to get them bought into it and to say to them, hey, we're going to
Mm,
spend 10 or 15 minutes doing X. Even if we're in a room with the door closed, like we're going to be behind closed doors for 10
yeah.
minutes. You can put us on a timer. You can come knock after the 10 minutes, but not before that time. And to your point, like
Mm,
giving the children activities to do, and it says to them, hey, this is your time to color or read, or you get 30 minutes on a screen.
yeah.
You get 30 minutes of your video game. I'm not going to disturb you, but let's spend our own time doing our own thing for a little while, and getting children bought into
Oh,
the
yeah.
concept of carving out time for certain things and
Hmm.
what in that relationship with time.
Hmm. And also, that's modeling things that you need to do to continue a healthy relationship,
Absolutely.
to continue a strong
Mhm.
relationship.
Yeah, sometimes people are even concerned about, arguing with their partner in front of children or having disagreements in front of children. And I think the beauty of that is that kids see that people don't always get along, but they still love each other and they can still support each other, and that it's okay.
Mm,
And it's okay for them to have a disagreement with someone and express their concerns, and they're still loved afterwards. And they can still feel loved and supported afterwards, that the world doesn't fall apart, that it's
yeah.
okay, that we can resolve problems and come back together.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, because even thinking about the clients that I have, not all of my clients that struggle with communication in their partnership had parents who were high conflict. Some of these couples also had parents who they never saw them have disagreement or argument because it all happened behind closed doors. And they didn't get to learn how to have that kind of conflict or kind of disagreement in a way that was going to be beneficial for the partnership.
Right. And so then in adulthood, they don't know that it's possible to resolve problems with their partner. And
Hmm.
so sometimes they can't find their voice because they're afraid, like, oh, if I disagree with this person, then it's all going to fall apart. Or, yeah, that it hasn't been modeled
Hmm.
for them. And I think it's important for us as parents to model those things for our children.
Yeah. And if you're a parent right now who is struggling with kind of having that connection and you're hearing us talking about like, oh, well, what is this like 15-minute conversation? Like, what does it actually look like? Well, you're in luck because I actually created an outline that you can download. If you look in the show notes, I'll link it there. And it is very much kind of positive base. So my intention is not for y'all to go into this conversation and feel like we're talking about our problems, but in you're talking about even your needs, but in a way your partner is going to hear it. We don't want to have criticism here. What is one thing I can do this week that will help you to feel supported? So questions like that instead of what is one thing I can do better? Like that already puts you kind of like in a defensive position, which I don't want y'all to have. So I created this outline that you can have like a scheduled sit down or do this in bed after the kids have gone to sleep and just start with 15 minutes. Like just do that for yourself.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. And the other thing is, like, it can't be negative every time, or somebody's going to start avoiding it anyway.
Hmm.
Like, why would we sign up for that,
Oh,
for
yeah.
a negative conversation every
Yes.
night or once a week or
Oh,
whatever?
yeah.
And people do. Like, somehow they get so busy or they're so sleepy all of a sudden because they're anticipating that it'll be a negative
Hmm.
interaction. I think it should be pleasurable. I had one couple that would intentionally have their conversations while they're sitting on a beanbag, caressing each other. So, because I think both of them, I think both of their
Oh,
love languages were physical touch. So we would caress each other and
okay.
have their conversation and look in each other's eyes.
Mm,
It should be pleasurable. It should be something that we're looking forward to.
yeah. And I had even recently heard that having these conversations where you can make eye contact, I mean, assuming that no one has a major trigger with eye contact, it is more beneficial than having a side by side conversation in the car because your body can be triggered and go into a fight or flight response with the side by side conversation versus the face to face conversation.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love it. And I think some of that is the intentionality, and so being very intentional about
Hmm.
even where we're sitting in the house. Is it at the dining room table, and does that represent something versus the bedroom, and does the bedroom represent something, or the couch, all of those things. And
Yeah.
making it a space where both partners feel safe and comfortable and cozy. And maybe we do pair it with other pleasurable things, maybe a hot chocolate or a hot toddy or blankets or something
Hmm.
fuzzy. But again, that it should be
Yeah.
a pleasurable experience, and we're even looking at all of our senses. It can be sensual in
Yeah.
that sense as well.
Hmm. Absolutely. So, shifting the conversation a little bit to people who are not maybe currently in a marriage or relationship, but they have kids and they're looking for that. Because I know that was something that you had brought up and wanted to talk about. So, I wanted to leave space for that as well.
Yeah, and I think it can be very age specific, right? Particularly like the age of your children and
Mm,
their
yeah.
understanding of what it means for you to date. I think sometimes it can be gender specific. Sometimes sons versus daughters respond differently to their father or mother dating someone, and what that means. What are your children's understanding or expectations about your relationship with their other parent? A lot of
Yeah.
times kids have all these notions in their head, right? Like, I think we know that in our generation, there were a lot of kids who weren't spoken to about their parents' relationship ending. And sometimes kids thought it was their fault. And so, what is your child's
Mm,
understanding of, are you and your former partner getting back together, and what that next person represents? So I think depending on a kid's
yeah.
age, too, even thinking about at what point do you let your child meet someone that you're dating? At what point do you have conversation with the other parent about dating? And particularly in most states, if you're divorced, it's a lot of times people have it in their parenting plan, like what that looks like. But I'm in the state of Georgia. The other parent doesn't have to abide by any rules related to introducing you to
Mm,
a new partner. So some people actually include that in their parenting plan. So this is kind of like, as a
okay.
relationship is ending, and that's what I was talking about with like kind of the rules and boundaries and expectations around introducing children and how are they introduced to new people. And like in the state of
Yeah.
Georgia, you're not required to introduce your old partner to your new partner. And so sometimes people feel some kind of way about that. Like, hey, this is a person that's going to be
Mm,
around my kid all the time. I have the right to meet them or maybe vet them. And I'm just going to say one more time, in most states, you don't have the right to do that. And so I think that's why it's
yeah.
important to have those kinds of conversations in advance in terms of like, at what point
Hmm.
will you introduce the kids to someone, or how will you introduce the kids to someone? And if you're in an amicable relationship, kind of co-partnering relationship, maybe even asking for support from
Hmm.
that other person, like, hey, I'm going to introduce the kids to this person. I want to make sure that you're supporting me in this, that you're reinforcing the fact that this person's a good person, or that you know that I make good choices, or all of those things. But there's a lot to
Yeah,
consider, and I think that some of these things are things that maybe people might want to process with their therapist, to bring that up in their individual therapy
absolutely.
to kind of fit their particular needs.
Oh, yeah. And I would even say, like, those are things that should be thought about because those are your personal boundaries in dating, right? Like, at what point would I introduce a partner to my child? Like, those are things you do want to think about and actually physically write down for yourself as a reminder before you even start going into the dating field or the dating field,
Yeah,
the dating
yeah.
world. But if you don't feel like you have any support, from friends or family and like actual support, then definitely seek out a therapist because they're going to be able to help you navigate, or they can. I'm not
Right.
saying all of them will, but a therapist can help you to navigate this space, especially if it's been a while since you've been in the dating field
Yeah, and I think the other thing to
world.
do is to even
Dating
it's a
field.
field, it's a world, it's a universe. I think it's also important to even reach out to people who have navigated it, because one of the things I was going to
Mm,
say too is being able to anticipate some of the challenges, and we can't always. Like, not everyone thinks that
no.
their
Yeah.
son is going to be so possessive of them that your kid's going to completely act out when you introduce them to a person, or might refuse to make eye contact with someone, or might refuse to shake their hand. I think the other thing is talking to the person that you're dating about what your expectations are of them, or what your expectations are of your child. I've known
Hmm.
situations where, really great guys have dated a woman with a kid, and because he's a great guy, he feels like the kids should think he's great too and give them hugs. And most of us are in a space where we're allowing our children to have body autonomy, and maybe not requiring a child to
Hmm.
hug someone, but that might feel rude to someone else. Like, oh, well, the kid didn't speak to
Yeah.
me, or didn't shake my hand, or didn't greet me in a certain way. So even being able to have those conversations, but I also feel like those aren't the things that we always anticipate going in. Like, oh, my kid has
No.
never
Yeah.
act that way towards anyone, but now all of a sudden they're acting so defensive with this individual. But it's important too, I think,
Hmm.
to talk to other people who've navigated the space, and find out, like, what are some of the things that you did, what are some of the best practices, how did you navigate some of these things, and what were some of those landmines that you weren't anticipating that you might recommend that I look out for.
And I understand in terms of like, as of right now, you and your child, you're the unit, you're the family. But sometimes that can get confusing because even though you're a unit, you're a family, you and your child, if you choose to date, like that's still your personal choice as an adult. And it shouldn't be the decision of your child to make for you of whether or not it's okay for you to date. Because I've seen that also. You had mentioned like someone being a great person and then thinking like the child should act a certain way. But I've also seen women dating a great person, but I mean, it doesn't matter if it's a woman or a man, but like someone dating a great person, but their child is like not accepting of them.
Oh
And
yeah.
then they're letting that child make this decision for them when it's not the child's decision. This is you, the adult's decision.
Yeah, I agree 1,000%. But it's also our job as parents to help the kids navigate through that, and to kind of figure
Hmm.
out what's going on. And that's a change, right? That might be very disruptive to the kid. The
Yeah.
kid, particularly with single mothers, there's lots of data that shows that when it's one kid and one parent, that it's a democratic process. That the mother comes home from
Oh,
work,
yeah.
looks at the kid and says, "What do you want to eat?" And we're going to eat whatever it is that you want to eat, or you get 50% of the vote, right? Like, you introduce another person in
Yeah.
this process, and it shifts the balance for that kid. The kid probably really liked their world the way it was. For the kid, the world was great.
Mm,
I don't know
yeah.
why you're trying to introduce another person. I
Mhm.
rebuke this person. I reject them. Get rid of them. I am voting them
Yeah.
off the island, because don't forget, I get 50%
Oh,
of the vote,
yeah.
and they don't. And that's the challenge with childhood, right? Like, you don't have as much power and
Yeah.
autonomy, but it is our job to help them process it and process their
Hmm.
concerns. And I go back to the multiple
Absolutely.
choice. Like, I'll use myself as an example. If this person is coming into my life, I would turn to my daughter. If I see her acting out, or if she's having a tantrum, or if it's passive aggressive, or whatever it is that she's doing, and ask her, what is that about? What are you feeling? What's going on? help her to put words to the big feelings. And then maybe when she tells me I don't know, because she thinks she's doing perfectly fine, because this is my kid, she's doing great.
Hmm.
If you ask her, then give her the multiple choice. Like, hey, are you concerned that if I'm dating this person, that's less time for us to spend together? Because if that's your concern, this is how I'm going to address it. I will make sure that we don't lose our reading together time, our TV time, our special dinners together. I'm going to protect that time. I'm going to make sure that we still have plenty of hugs and kisses. This was a situation I dealt with, and I do think that my daughter is
Mm.
extremely affectionate, and she was concerned that I was going to give all my hugs and kisses away to this other person. I am not. I
Oh,
have plenty of hugs,
yeah.
and my kid is cuddly. I have plenty of hugs and kisses for you, but she doesn't know that because this is new territory for her,
Yeah.
right? And so I have to be her lighthouse. She sees there is a storm coming, there are ships rocking, and the
Hmm.
notion of me being with somebody else completely rocks her boat. I'm the lighthouse. I am the steady state, and I'm the person who offers her stability and security. That I'm not going anywhere. I will always be her mother. There's no one's love that can ever take my love away from her. And I've actually thought about it. Like, is there anything that would make me stop loving this kid? Absolutely not. So to reassure her that she doesn't have to earn my love, that she has it, and it is stable and safe and secure, regardless of whoever comes in and out of our
Yeah,
lives. So I think it's one, helping
absolutely.
the kids adjust, but in some cases, it's also helping those adults
Mhm.
adjust because you might have a partner that comes in who doesn't like the way that you parent, who feels like, the way that you're communicating with this child or that child has autonomy in some way or is allowed to do certain things. And so I think it's also having those conversations with that new person about,
Oh, yeah.
what is your parenting style? What does the relationship with your child look like? What do you see as their relationship with your child so that we can all negotiate these things and talk about what does that look like? I think for kids,
Mm.
some people feel like your child has to like the person that you're dating. I feel like you can't mandate feelings. You can't tell a child to like someone,
Yeah.
but you can say what respect looks like. And you can require that. Like, I can
Mhm.
mandate respect, that you're not rude to this person, that you're not cutting them off, that you at least, I live,
Yeah.
we live in the South, so I live in Georgia. You have to speak to people when you walk in the room. That's like non-negotiable. You cannot walk into a room and not speak to
Mm.
adults in the
Yeah.
room. But I also don't like for that situation with the hugs. I don't require my daughter to hug anyone. I don't require her to hug her grandfathers. I'm definitely not going to require her to hug a man that I'm
Mhm.
dating. So that's something that
Yeah.
but both parties need to understand. But you, as the central person, as the person who's the parent and dating someone, that you're the liaison. You are setting the culture. So
Mhm.
in my relationship or in my household, I
Oh,
can
yeah.
say that I'm the CEO. I'm the chief emotional officer. So I'm checking in with everyone's
Oh, I
emotions
love that.
and I'm helping everyone manage their emotions and manage their feelings around whatever the transition is that we're dealing with.
So the other thing too is kind of like to help people put this into perspective in terms of like your child doesn't have to like them, but they have to respect them. We all have family members. I'm going to make a pretty broad statement. I'm sure every one of us here listening has a family member that we just don't like, but we're not going to be rude to them purposefully because we don't like them. Like we're still going to show them respect because they're part of our family, but we don't have to like them.
Yeah, and I feel like with children, these are transferable skills that they're developing, right? And
Hmm.
that there are teachers and coaches and
Yeah.
people who,
Bosses.
yeah, but even for in their little world, there are all these adults in their world that we respect, that we learn how to get along with. That it's the same thing when we're introducing this
Mhm.
new person into our kids. Most of our kids switch teachers every year. So they're like, wait.
Oh,
And
yeah.
but I think that's the sensitivity of when to introduce your children to someone, because you don't want it to be this kind of revolving door, right? But even if it does feel like a
Yeah.
revolving door to your kid, like how often your kid has to transition teachers, transition leadership, and transition other leaders, church members or other leaders in our community, that they have to sometimes code switch. And The rules with your teacher might be very
Mhm.
different than the rules at grandma's house, but they can adjust. And so sometimes they're like, but that's not
Yeah.
how you do things, or that's not how we do things. The rules change depending on the environment, but you are adaptable. But sometimes they'll try to use that and weaponize it,
Mm.
like, well, that's not what my mom does. Well, the rules are a little bit different at grandma's house or at your aunt's house than they are at our house, but we're going to abide by the rules there, you know?
Mhm. Yeah. They're put into a situation where they can see dating happening that people who've been in a two-parent household don't get to see, and that doesn't have to be negative.
Right.
Like, that can be a positive experience if you're dating in a healthy way, that can be a positive experience for your child to see.
Right. And some people even treat it like friendships, that mommy has a friend
Mm,
who happens to be of the same sex or of the opposite sex. And then it's not as foreign of a concept for children, that you see how you're modeling for your children how you build relationships, how you build healthy relationships, what that looks like, how time is negotiated, and modeling that for
yeah.
children as well. I think even as it relates to their own friendships, sometimes friendships get very possessive, like, oh, well, this person is
Oh,
talking to
yeah.
this person and not me. And it's a conversation I had with my daughter when she was in kindergarten, because there was a little girl who was telling other children who could be friends with whom. And I said, that girl doesn't own those
Mm,
relationships. She doesn't own anyone. And you have the capacity
yeah.
of being friends with both people. You don't have to choose. And so I think it's similar.
Oh,
I think it's
yeah.
similar in dating, that you're demonstrating your capacity to build relationships, to build healthy relationships, to set boundaries, what your tolerance is, how you're communicating your needs with other people. And you can model that and demonstrate that with your children. I often share things that happen in my primary relationship with my daughter so that she understands some of the struggles. And something recently came up
Mm,
where I was sharing something with her, and she was like, oh, mommy, thank you for advocating for me in that conversation, because I was advocating for her. And I want her to know that even when
mhm.
you're not present, this is how I speak about you, or this is what I tell people about you, so they can understand you better.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think the last piece about dating that I wanted to just give some consideration to is if you're dating someone
Mhm.
else who has children, and what that might look like for your children to
Yes.
meet each
I meant to
other.
bring that up
Yeah,
earlier.
to meet each other, to interact with each other.
Yeah.
And I think, having those conversations as well. Like, what does that mean for you? Are you treating it like a friendship? Like, are you open to meeting this child who might be, younger than you or older than you? Are you comfortable with that? And preparing both children on both sides for introductions.
Yeah, yeah. And so I think that also speaks to what is the sweet spot to introducing your kids to someone. And that's definitely something you have to think about for yourself because one, you don't want to introduce them too early, right? Because if you don't even know what the situation with you and this person is, that's probably not the greatest time to introduce your child to them. But you also don't want to wait too
Yeah.
long where you're like, oh, yeah, we're ready to get married. But your child is just now meeting this person.
Yeah.
Like, that's not okay either.
So I would agree. I think there's a sweet spot, and I think a lot of it depends on temperaments too. I have a friend who has
Mm.
three kids, and three kids of three completely different personalities, and so she goes in pretty early because she needs the guys that she's dating to understand, like, these are these personalities, and these three people aren't going anywhere anytime soon. So you have to date me as a unit, as a package. And I want to be
Mm.
sure that you're comfortable with these very distinct, very strong personalities. Because I
Oh,
think I
yeah.
think there
Yeah.
is, to your point, there is a too early and there is a like too late. And so where's this place where we can collectively build? So you and your partner, just like in marriage, like, that's the foundation, and we do want to make sure that is firm and solid before we start building the second floor and
Mhm.
third floor, but making sure that our children are on the first floor, because if our new partner and the kids don't get along, then that's going to be disruptive to the primary relationship, to your relationship with that person. That can undermine your relationship with your kids. So again, I think some of it's temperament specific, There's a lot of
Yeah.
conversation that goes into it, a lot of intentionality that goes into it. And I think
Mm.
that can be processed with friends or with family members. But I would also say that I think it's really important to sit down and process it with a professional, with your therapist, and kind of talk about like all of the nuances and consideration.
Absolutely. Well, we are about out of time, and I'm like to be very respectful of my guests' time. But if someone is listening right now to Bari and they're like, oh, I really like what she has to say, I want to learn more about her, I want to get into her world, or maybe I want to work with her, like I'm in the state of Georgia and I'm looking for a therapist, what is the best way to get into your world, get into contact you, and learn more about you?
Yeah. So I'm actually rebuilding my website, but you can always find me at Dr. underscore Tavari, Tavari underscore therapy. And so that's on Instagram. And my webpage is there. So you can always link to the webpage there. But I'm really, really excited about, connecting with people and talking about developmental issues that we all go through all these changes in
Mm.
life. And there's no good guidebook for every chapter of our lives. I think it's really important to take some time to ourselves and really process and be clear with ourselves what our own wants, needs, and desires are. And then to be able to turn to the people in our lives and say, this is what I need. Is that something that you can accommodate? Or this is what I need. How does that fit with your needs? Be it our partners or having those very transparent
Mm.
conversations with our children.
Absolutely. Well, and then we'll definitely get all of that linked up in the show notes. And whenever your website is ready, we can link that up too.
Absolutely. So probably by the time the show goes out, I'll probably have a new website up. So I'm excited. It's going to be beautiful.
Awesome. Well, thank you again so much, Tavari, for joining us today. And I hope you have a great rest of your week.
My pleasure. You too.